JT Show.
What's going on, you sexy beasts, and welcome to another episode of the Smash JT Show, my weekly variety show and entertainment and news revolving around the video game industry and divisive topics. This is something that airs every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern. If you don't want to miss it, hit that subscribe, hit that bell for notifications, and without further ado, let's just jump right into it. The past few months have been filled with wild speculation regarding Sony and Microsoft's next consoles, the follow-ups to the PlayStation 4 and Xbox Ones. But recently hitting the news is Google making a console for the next generation. This is kind of in the area of beyond rumors and speculation, but we do have some concrete evidence that they are moving in that direction. While Google hasn't come out right and said, hey, we're making a console right now, there is some hard evidence that they're working on it based off of rumors from 5 people who have said they've been part of discussions with Google talking about a 3-pronged approach of getting into the video game industry. Beginning with 1, some sort of streaming platform, 2, some sort of hardware, and 3, an attempt to bring developers under the Google umbrella. And like I said before, this isn't anything new to Google. They've been trying to break into the video game industry for a while. Back in 2014, they were working on acquiring Twitch before Amazon swooped in and took that from them. And back in 2016, their original studio, Niantic, before they actually spun off and went independent, created one of those games you might have heard of, Pokemon Go. And in March of 2018 at the Game Developers Conference, Google actually sat with a bunch of game developers asking them specifics on what they're looking for in the industry, trying to gauge interest in its streaming platform, codenamed Yeti. So as of right now, that's pretty much all we have to go on. But that's a lot of information if you actually dig into it. Google's looking into getting into the video game console industry, and they're focusing on streaming services, which makes me wonder what the direction of the video game industry is headed. You guys, if you've been watching my videos previously, you know I've said this a lot in the past. The direction of the video game industry is clearly headed towards a path of streaming only, whether you like it or not. And while I firmly believe there will be an option to play physical discs or cartridges on one console at least, there's going to be a niche to fill for that. With Google going the direction of the streaming service and creating their own console, I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say about that. As for me personally, I've told a few people about this privately. I'm not really in on Google joining the massive industry of creating a video game system. First off, I already feel like it's inundated between Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. I don't really see there being room for a 4th. This is coming from a guy who owns all the current gen systems. I really couldn't see myself wanting to buy another console unless there was a killer app on it or a crazy great new IP that they created, and it's something that does something so different and wildly changing the environment of the video game industry completely. Outside of that, I really don't see a need for another game company coming into the console race. While I do firmly believe that competition is extremely healthy and it's good for the industry, there comes a point where it gets so inundated that it's just too much and the market gets completely saturated. And I almost feel like if another big time competitor came in right now and did that, it would have the potential of hurting the health of the industry overall and not actually helping it. But that's only if they plan on competing directly with Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. Like I said, if this is going to be a streaming platform and it's just going to be Android-based mobile phone games, then that's completely different. They're going to be competing with Apple TV, and we all know how Apple TV did with the video game race. Or if they go the other end of the spectrum and go with augmented reality or some sort of high-class virtual reality or something that I can't even think of right now that hasn't even been done yet, then maybe there'll be room for them, but only then. If they just come in and do the same exact thing, I don't really see this thing working out. In fact, I think their best approach for getting into the video game industry would to be starting with developers and starting with creating games first, creating IPs, creating something in the video game world to see if it's something that they could be successful with in the first place. Diving head on to the console race? That kind of seems like putting the cart before the horse in this case, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. Let me know down in the comments below. Do you feel like there's room for another video game competitor console out there? Or do you feel like it's going to flood the market? Moving on to our smashing video of the week. This one's going to be a little bit different. than the typical smashing video of the week, and I couldn't help but share this one with you because it absolutely cracked me up. You may or may not have already seen this security footage video of the woman falling through the ceiling at the convenience store robbery, but I bet you haven't seen the Metal Gear Solid enhanced version.
What was that noise?
This is brought to us by the Mexico House, and they interjected Metal Gear Solid sound effects and music to make it absolutely perfect. Strongly recommend you guys watching this one. I'll put the link down below in the description, and I dare you not to laugh while watching it. And moving on to our next topic, during the most recent Nintendo shareholders meeting, President Furukawa had announced that they are looking into the successor of the 3DS. Yeah, you heard me right. Now this is something that you can take a few different directions on, if they're gonna actually be making a whole nother console to take over the 3DS, or if they're gonna move into the Switch territory and make another system that plays Switch games but also does other things. And this brings us into the territory of, are they making the mini Switch finally? This is a topic I covered over 6 months ago, where I felt like Nintendo definitely was going to be making a mini Switch, and I talked about how they could use the 3DS, turn it sideways, insert the 3DS carts, and be able to play 3DS games on a mini Switch just like you can play them on the 3DS. Nintendo's been moving the 3DS towards 2DS territory for a very long time now, and it's almost feeling like it's in anticipation of doing just that, being able to use the Nintendo Switch as the 3DS, but without the 3D functionality. It absolutely devours the Switch install base, so it only makes sense to make something for the 3DS and 2DS owners to transition them into buying a Nintendo Switch. And I feel like the mini Switch personally is the way to go with this, allowing people to play 3DS games along with Switch games on the same platform. Now that might piss off people who bought the Nintendo Switch originally, but the other way you can look at that is, this day and age, if you're buying the first run of a console, expect for it to be outdated within the first year of release. That kind of same thing happened with my Apple Watch, where this is the first gen Apple Watch and now it's completely useless because it can't get the updates that the new Apple Watches have. That's technology, and I feel like that's exactly what's going to happen with Nintendo and the direction they head with the Switch. Now as for what the Switch Mini is able to do, that's totally up to Nintendo and the direction they want to take it, but I want to throw the question out to you guys. Do you feel like Nintendo's going to make a mini Switch? Do you feel like that's the direction they're going to head? Or is it going to be a completely different direction that nobody's even thinking about right now? Do you feel like it's a good idea for them to move away from the 3DS line? There's so many different questions here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because there's just so much to talk about with it. Let me know down below. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about that. And finally, on a personal note, I opened up the Smash JT Patreon this week, and I'll be honest guys, I mean, I didn't really want to do this, but life circumstances kind of forced it. And while it was initially met with a few hate comments and a lot of dislikes on the video, after the first couple hours dissipated, it was met with a resounding success and happiness and positivity. And I did have to do a little bit of house cleaning with the hate comments that were intentionally hurtful. I don't mind people being critical. I do draw the line at hate comments, and if you gotta ask yourself what a hate comment is or not, chances are it's probably a hate comment. But regardless of that, the support has been completely outstanding and blowing me away. I honestly couldn't expect this kind of response from you guys so soon after posting that video. So thank you. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode. Again, if you enjoy what I'm doing here and you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. If you want notifications, hit the notification bell, and hopefully YouTube works with that. If you enjoy the Smash JT show, come back every Friday at 8 AM Pacific time. I also make other content throughout the week. Thank you so much for watching, and you guys stay sexy.